Hi guys, Vishnu here. Welcome to Just Simplicity. So, yet another video for you people. So, this video will be about the further characteristics of the pieces, such as the obstructing and the striking powers that a piece has on a chessboard. So, let's look at this example. Let's directly get into the example. So, this is my first example for you people. This is the position. You can see that black is up in material. He is an exchange up. And by the way, what do you mean by an exchange up? An exchange up means you're having a major piece against a major piece for a minor piece of your opponent. It could be a rook for a bishop or a rook for a knight. It's called a minor. It's normally called as exchange up. You call it a major exchange up when it is a queen for a rook. Okay, that's so. In this position, black is an exchange up because he's got a rook for a bishop and one extra pawn as well. White has only 3 pawns and one pass pawn, which is about to queen. It's 2 moves away from queening. It's on a6. But the problem is his own bishop is obstructing his path, so he needs to move to some other square and promote the pawn to a queen. At the same time, you can see that this rook is threatening. This rook on h2 is threatening to capture the rook pawn on c2 and then come to a2, thereby controlling the complete a file, preventing the a6 pawn from queening. So, like I said, obstructing the pieces are said to be powerful when they have mobility. What I mean by mobility means the activity of the pieces. Activity means the number of squares that it can control. It is important for both attacking as well as for defending. Say that if you want to attack, then if you have more control over the board, if you have more squares under your control, then you can attack well. At the same time, if you can obstruct the mobility, if you can restrict the mobility of your opponent, then you can defend well, thereby decreasing the mobility of a particular attacking piece of your opponent. So thereby you are performing a role of a defender also in that sense. So obstruction can be used both for attack and defense. In this position, you can clearly see that the bishop on a7 is blocking its own pawn's path. So at the same time, there is a threat of rook c2 and followed by rook a2. So what is the best way that white can defend this position right now? Because he's under imminent threat. So here comes a very good move called bishop f2. Bishop f2. The idea of bishop f2 is once rook takes f2 happens, then you can simply push this pawn to a7. After that, rook takes c2, but by that time it would be too late because the pawn would have queen by that time. And then white can win this position. So bishop f2 is a very good move. It's obstructing the rook's path in order to preventing it from reaching the key square a2. So black played rook takes h5. Now it is planning to come to a5, this square a5, and prevent the pawn from queening. So white will not allow that to happen. So now it plays bishop b6. Now you can see the striking powers of the bishop. Striking power in the sense it is attacking a square. It is controlling a square. Now it is controlling the a5 square. So if the rook comes to a5, it can snatch the rook with bishop a5. Okay, so here you might be thinking, okay, I'll go to the sub variations once I finish the main variation so that I can clear all the doubts that you have. So the main variation here states that the best move that black has got is move his rook to h3. He is coming to a3 now. He wants to come to a3 and again prevent this pawn from queening. So bishop c5 was played, controlling the a3 square, thereby again preventing the rook from coming to a3. Once again, striking power of the bishop is highlighted here. Now the rook moves back to h1. So at each time you also observe that each time when the bishop is trying to control a square, the rook is attacking another square which is undefended by the bishop. So like I said, it is when you are playing a game, make sure that you open diagonals and lines for your pieces so that your pieces are in full control. After rook h1, white plays bishop to d4, controlling the a1 square, again preventing rook to a1. The rook is planning to come to a1 in order to catch up with this pawn on a6. Now the bishop is on d4 controlling that square and the rook cannot do anything about it. Now rook h3 is played, once again coming to a3 square. This time the bishop will not go to c5, because if you play bishop to c5 again, the moves will be repeated. Again the rook will go to h1. So, and again you will have to come to bishop to d4, so you don't want that to happen. So you played bishop b2 here. Now if c3 happens, you might be wondering what will happen if c3 comes. You can simply push the pawn a7, cb2, 8 queen with check. Now if the king moves to f7, you can come to a2 with check and you can capture the pawn on the next turn, king g6 and queen b2. Now if the king moves to e7, you can keep a couple of checks, capture the pawns, and after that capture the b2 pawn as well. For example, queen moves to d8, king e6, queen takes d6 check, king e5. Now you cannot capture the free rook even if you could, because this pawn would queen here. So you don't want that to happen. So you played queen g7 check. Now it's like kind of a skewer kind of trick. Not exactly a skewer because there should be a larger piece, but it's a check, and once you move, you can capture the pawn on b2. Once black moves, so king e4 was played, queen takes b2. Now it's clearly winning for white. With another couple, you can give the c6 pawn is sure to fall, and this h7 pawn can also fall. Will also fall. And he has got one more pass pawn. He can promote this to a queen, and they are much superior to one rook. So it's clearly winning for white. Let's get back to the position. So that's why after bishop b2, c3 was not played, and once again the rook goes back to h5. Once again trying to come to a5 square. But this time, after this move made by white, black has lost all his options, which is bishop to c3. This is a very crucial move for white. Now bishop to c3 is controlling both a1 square and a5 square. So even if he comes to h1, you don't have to worry about it because it is already under control. And you can simply push your pawn to a7. And you can see these three pieces here, 2 pawns and 1 bishop, are preventing the rook to come to the a file. Because of the c2 pawn, it cannot come to a2. Because of the c3 bishop, it cannot come to a3. Because of the c4, black's own c4 pawn, it cannot come to a4. So the only 2 other squares that it has got is a1 and a5. And now white has taken that under control by playing the move bishop to c3. Now clearly white is winning here. There is nothing that black can do about this. Now let's take a look at the sub variations. You might be wondering as a beginner, why should I play bishop f2? What will happen if I play bishop to g1? Bishop to g1, rook c2, a7, and after rook a2, king b7, a8 queen, and you still have a bishop and a pawn against 4 pawns. Isn't it a win for white? Well, it's not. It's going to only fetch you a draw. Rook takes c2, a7, rook a2, king b7, c3, a8 queen, rook takes 8, king takes 8. Well, this position is actually an equal position and it is only going to be a draw. I have verified it with the engine, and even if you want it, you can check it out yourself. I'm not going to get into the end game because that's not the point of discussion right now. It's not the topic. I just wanted to prove you the obstructing and the striking powers of a particular piece in chess. So if rook takes f2 happens after bishop f2, like I said, a7, rook takes c2, a8, queen check. Now bishop b6. Now you might be wondering, why not I can play bishop e1? I'm still controlling the a5 square by playing bishop to e1. Now so let's take a look at that variation, bishop e1. So bishop e1 if plays rook e5, a7, rook e1, 8 queen. So if black plays rook to e5 after you play bishop e1, you can win the game. Now, after rook h3, what happens? Let us check. Bishop a5, rook h5, bishop c3, and once again we reach the same position. And here white is winning. So bishop e1 is also an alternate move through which you can win the game. It's another alternate move. Rook h3, a7, and wins. Now here bishop c5. Another move, if you can find it out yourself, it will be great. So pause the video now. Think about it. Is there any alternate ways to win this game? Pause the video and think for 15 seconds and find the right move, please. You can post it as comments if you want. So here you can also play bishop to a5, completely blocking the a file, so that if the rook comes to a file, you can play king to b6, supporting the bishop and also giving space and time for white to promote his pawn. Rook a3, king b6. So these are the variations in this. So let's take a look at another variation too. Yes, we saw already what happens with king e7. So I think I've covered all the variations in this. So the idea is how to try to use your pieces also try to use the obstructive and striking powers of your piece such as in the same way as shown in this example, so that it can win games. So this is a key tactic. So we'll go through one more example and we'll end this topic. I mean, I'll be covering more videos on this in more detail, but for today. Okay, this is a game played between two grandmasters. You might have heard about Alexander Alekhine. In case you have not heard of Alexander Alekhine, he is a very great player. He is also a former world champion, long back in the 19th century. He's played against Cole, who's also a famous player. I think there is an opening name after him. It's called the Cole system or something. So here Alekhine is playing white and Cole is playing black. You can see that the material is equal. 3 pawns plus 2 pawns on the queen side and 3 pawns on the king side, 5 pawns each. Queen versus queen, 2 rooks each. But look at the position. White has a passed pawn. The rook has got open files, the queen has got open files, whereas black has got none. So here the back rank is particularly weak for the king because, he doesn't have an escape square. If there is, he has got an h7, but you can combine these two rooks, and if you can keep a check on h8 and the king is on h7, then it would be checkmate. Even if the king is on h6, still it would be checkmate because this queen is on g5 and the king cannot come to this square because it is blocked by his own queen. Of course, you can't come to h5 because the rook is on h8. So, Alakan uses this pattern recognition technique here. Is obstructing power. He has understood that black's own queen is creating problems. Black's own pieces and queen is creating problems for his own king, and immediately takes advantage of it. He plays a very good move. Queen takes d7, rook takes d7, rook e8 check. I'll tell you why you can't bring the other rook first, but here first you play rook e8 check, king h7, rook c8, doubling the rooks on the 8th rank. Now even if you play king h6 and it is checkmate, your rook h8 because you can't move forward, it's checkmate. If you play, there is only one way to stop it. You have to keep rook d8, rook takes d8, queen takes d8, rook takes d8 again. But then you lose a lot of material and white is clearly up in material and he can easily win this game. You can prevent a mate, but of course you can't prevent yourself from losing this game or saving this game. It's completely lost for black. So that is a problem that black is facing here. So let me tell you what happens if you played rook c8 check first. Well, this is indeed a big blunder because black can defend well with rook d8 check. If rook takes d8, then queen takes d8, then black has a queen for a rook and he can easily win this game. And even if you play rook to e8 check, it's still okay. You can capture on e8, rook takes e8, rook takes e8, simply come to h7. And you have only one rook, but black has got a queen. So, I hope you understood how to obstruct and understood the striking powers and the obstructing powers of a particular piece and how it can be both a bane and boon for you. So make sure that when you open up lines and diagonals, you place your pieces in such a way that it is active. Also at the same time, not block your own pieces so that you put yourself in trouble. Especially when you when such an obstruction happens towards your king on the king side, especially where your king is placed, normally usually there will be chances to mate the king. Because it has no way to escape because the path is obstructed. So obviously there will be mating chances. So make sure you don't awkwardly place your pieces. Okay, that's it guys for today. I'll be coming up with more detailed videos regarding these tactics and strategies. Please stay tuned. And if you would like to learn any tactic from me, please mention in the comments so that I can know about it and I can bring more videos on that particular topic. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up and do subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to do that. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Good night guys. Take care of yourself.